Hello, everybody. This is Dr. Cole. It's late Sunday evening, July 9th, and this is the beginning of week 2 for Humanities 2333 Philosophy of Life for the summer 2023 term on the second 7-week schedule. Okay, everybody, what we have this week, this Wednesday the 12th, we're going to take our second of 2 extra credit quizzes. We had the first one on informal fallacies last week, Friday. We'll do the second one on Wednesday the 12th. The material will be the class notes for units 1 and 3. And you'll have 5 multiple choice questions to answer, 3 points extra credit for each. You get 3 points for each one you get correct. You don't lose anything for getting any incorrect. Okay? So, with those 2 quizzes, one point to do in this is to give you some idea of what you can expect on your midterm exam and your final exam. Okay. All right, so that will be taking place on Wednesday for 24 hours. What we have on the syllabus for this week is Units 3 and 4, at least at the beginning of Unit 4. It'll stretch over into next week. Unit 3 is on Plato and Aristotle. Unit 4 is on Rationalism and Empiricism. All right. Well, Unit 3 first of all, and this, of course, is related to the assignment that you have for your first written assignment, due not this week but next week, on the 19th. You're asked to discuss whether you think you are a Platonist or an Aristotelian, whether Plato's views or those of Aristotle are closer to your worldview or the way you see the world. So, it's not really a research paper, although it might not hurt you to do a little bit of research. You probably should. But basically it's asking you to think of how you see the world and which of these 2 thinkers is your worldview closer to. Now, everybody, we have a little bit of a problem because our new textbook does not include a chapter on Plato and Aristotle. The old textbook did. But the old textbook hasn't been updated since 2009. It was getting hard for students to find it. So we don't have quite as much to go on as we would have otherwise. One thing about the previous textbook, it did include considerable excerpts from the writings of Plato and Aristotle, which would be helpful to have. But some of that stuff can be found if you poke around online anyway. All right, so we're going to try to do it this way for this time around. Now, to put the issue in a nutshell, Plato and Aristotle's views on matters such as ethics and politics are widely discussed. But what we're interested in, what's really central to their thinking, is what we might call the problem of form and matter. And you need to think about how you would stand on that and compared to the way they come across. Now, the problem was we had to give an account of how it is that something can change and yet remain the same. Like a human being who starts out as an infant, then a toddler, then a child, then a grown-up. But we say it's the same person all along. Okay, well, how can we say that? Well, a point was reached. It was concluded that the best account that could be given for the time being was to say that the matter developed and changed, although the form remained the same. Okay, so the matter changes, the form does not. Okay, now, how do we give an account of form? Plato believed that anything we come across in the world is real only insofar as it partakes of the appropriate form. Okay. The form itself, in his thinking, appeared to be located in another worldly realm, another dimension. It wasn't available to us in this world of space and time. Aristotle comes along and says, well, no, the form is not anywhere but in the thing itself. It's not in another dimension. Now, you could say Plato's view, you could describe it as proto-Christian, that is, anticipating Christianity, although Christianity does not come along for several more centuries. Plato and Aristotle are 4 or 5 centuries before the birth of Christ. Aristotle, you could say, anticipates what we call modern scientific empiricism. We tell our students Plato was a mathematician, but Aristotle was a biologist. Aristotle's father was a physician. Aristotle liked to collect biological specimens. So in some respects, he anticipates what we know today as modern natural science. All right. So the point is for you to find out what you can about Plato and Aristotle on this issue in particular, and discuss whether you are a Platonist or an Aristotelian. Now, some people fall squarely in between, they say. If that's where you end up standing, say that. That's okay. All right. Most students will take one position or the other. Now, what you have to go on is we don't have all that much in the textbook. You could look up the references to Plato and Aristotle in the index to your textbook. That might help you. I don't know how much it would help you, because the references are sort of in passing. They're scattered throughout various chapters of the textbook. You have my class notes. You have the Crash Course Philosophy episode that I want to send out. I want to send out the link. It's on Plato. Okay. You have in the description of the written assignment a couple of sites that you can visit. The Catholic Encyclopedia is especially good on Aristotle, I believe I mentioned. And there's then the Internet Encyclopedia of Philosophy. Okay. I've also put up on the course homepage, under Unit 3, on Plato and Aristotle, some of the notes I took from the great classical scholar W.K.C. Guthrie and his History of Greek Philosophy, the volume that covers Aristotle. And you'll find some remarks there on Aristotle and perhaps how he could be contrasted with Plato. So I hope that'll be helpful to you. There are histories of philosophy available in the McKee Library. You may be able to research the topic perfectly well online with the class notes that I've given you in addition. Okay. All right, so we're going to give it a try that way, and that will be due next week on the 19th. Keep in mind, the issue is that of form versus matter. You may also wish to comment on their views about other issues like ethics or politics, but really the central issue is form versus matter. All right, so that assignment will be due not this week, but next week, Wednesday the 19th. Now then, after that, I would like you to get started on Unit 4, Rationalism and Empiricism. Now, that's a lengthy enough set of class notes. We'll continue it over into next week, but you should at least get started taking a look at it. Now, the issue between the rationalists and the empiricists would take up a good bit of a course on the history of modern philosophy that you might take if you were at a larger research institution with more course offerings in philosophy. What's at issue is how it comes about that we can know anything. In other words, it's an issue in epistemology, the nature of knowledge. How is it that we can know anything? The two contrasting views are rationalism and empiricism. If you're an empiricist, you believe that knowledge comes strictly from sense experience. Okay. If you're a rationalist, you believe that there can be knowledge other than from sense experience. Okay. Now, in the history of philosophy, we say that the great rationalists are Descartes, Spinoza, and Leibniz, and the great empiricists are Locke, Berkeley, and Hume. Then Kant comes along and tries to resolve the differences and comes to a tentative solution to the issue between the rationalists and the empiricists that most philosophers think is a genuine advance in philosophy. All right, now, as far as I'm concerned, for our purposes, the most important thinkers are Descartes, Locke, Hume, and Kant. Let me give it to you in a nutshell, the issue between the rationalists and the empiricists. René Descartes comes along. He's a Frenchman, and he believes that simply through contemplation he can arrive at bona fide, genuine knowledge of the world. Okay. First, he believes that he himself exists. I think, therefore I am. Cogito ergo sum in Latin. I cannot doubt my own existence. And from that, he believes he can prove the existence of God and objects in the external world. So that's Descartes' rationalism in a nutshell. Then Locke comes along. He's an Englishman, of course. He says, no. This rationalism is a lot of malarkey. Knowledge comes from sense experience and nothing but. The mind is a blank slate upon which experience writes. Blank slate, or in Latin that comes out, tabula rasa. Okay, so Locke believes that the mind is a blank slate upon which experience writes, and all knowledge comes from experience. David Hume, is a Scotsman. You'll meet any number of philosophers for whom Hume is their favorite philosopher. Well, Hume comes along, and he's also an empiricist, but he's also, at the same time, a skeptic. And he believed that Locke jumped to some conclusions about how certain and definite we can be that we know something based upon our sense experience. Because what Locke assumed was that there's a correspondence between our experience and objects in the world. That may not necessarily be the case. We know that our senses can be mistaken. Classic example that's used: you put a pencil in a glass of water, it looks like it's bent, but it's really not. Okay. Hume eventually arrives at the conclusion that it's very, very difficult on a certain level for us to say that we can really know anything. Okay. We have to go through the world in our everyday lives on the basis that we can, but what we're doing may not really be philosophically warranted. So perhaps we're not warranted in saying that we can know very much at all. David Hume. Now, Kant comes along and tries to resolve the issue once and for all. And what he says is that there's both a rational and an empirical element to all knowledge. Second, sense experience may be the occasion for knowledge. But, he says, we couldn't really know anything based upon experience unless our brains and our minds were already preloaded with a sort of software that allows us to make sense of that experience by putting it into certain categories. And the most important categories are those of cause and effect and substance and accident. Okay. Cause and effect is fairly simple. Okay. So the substance of a thing is the thing itself, but it may have various accidental qualities, like smell and color, to take a couple of for instances. So substance and accident, cause and effect. Kant believes our minds are set up to interpret our sense experience that way, and otherwise we wouldn't be able to say we knew much of anything at all. But more about that next time, perhaps. I just wanted to give you that as a nutshell. You should stretch that out from this week into next week, since it's such a long set of class notes. And there'll be more on the syllabus next week, in addition to finishing up Unit 4 on the rationalists and empiricists. Let's see. Everybody, before I go, you are assigned some textbook chapters for Unit 4. Let me double check exactly what that is for Unit 4. Right, we're going to want you to look at Chapter 7 from the textbook on the rationalists and the empiricists. That's the first textbook assignment that we really have for one of our units in the course this term. All right, so that's what we're doing this week. Doing Unit 3 to help you get ready for your written assignment next week. And we'll get started on Unit 4. We'll have an extra credit quiz on the class notes for Units 1 and 3 on Wednesday for 24 hours. 15 points available, 5 3-point questions. Okay, so we're doing Unit 3 on Plato and Aristotle and getting started on Unit 4. We want to finish Unit 3 this week because that'll be helpful to you in working on your written assignment that is due not this week but next week on Wednesday the 19th. All right, that is it for this week, everybody. I'll talk to you again about a week from now at this time. In the meantime, study hard. I hope you will attempt that extra credit quiz. Should be getting started on your written assignment and looking at the material for units 3 and 4. So study hard, take it easy, and we'll talk to you again about a week from now at this time.